A significant pattern change is well underway, and this is going to bring a multi-day threat of severe weather, flooding, and well above average temperatures for certain areas of the country. We're here to give you all the details that we have on this. We'll discuss that first, then we'll dive into the pattern itself. But listen, if you're a big fan of warm weather, or if you're just sick of winter, and I'll be honest, I'm ready for spring myself, hold your horses because this could just be a false spring. I'm already watching around the mid-month time frame. We're not going to get super detailed on it, but how we can have an abrupt shift back to colder than average temperatures, or just back to average temperatures, and then winter weather could emerge once again. So we'll discuss that also, and then we'll round it off with today's weather. My name is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you haven't, like the video if you like it, and of course, if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's go over the latest from the Storm Prediction Center first, and we'll start off with tomorrow and then just pretty much go over the next several days. And this is tomorrow, Wednesday morning through Thursday morning. We have a slight risk in the yellow area. That's a level 2 out of 5. And then in the dark green, that is a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5. So let's zoom into some of these areas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all the way up to Fort Smith, and do a very small section of southwestern Missouri. Make sure I don't get my states mixed up here. But this is a level 2 out of 5 risk, a slight risk, and in the dark greens, a marginal level 1 out of 5. Now, what's driving this? There is a tornado threat. If you live in this green area, hopefully you can see this pretty good on your screen. That's a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. This could increase. We'll watch for that. Remember, this isn't locked in. I'm making this video as of around 6:30 Eastern time here on Tuesday morning, so this information could change a little bit, but a 2% risk of a tornado. And then you look at the wind graphic here. This is one of the things driving the slight risk, and we'll zoom in a little bit. This yellow area, that is a 15% risk of damaging winds, basically winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then we'll look at the hail threats. It's a little bit larger than the wind threat area. And in this yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. It stretches from just north of Waco all the way up to southwestern areas. Very small section of southwestern Missouri, includes northwestern Arkansas, and it does include eastern areas of Oklahoma. All right, so what about Thursday's risk? We also have a slight risk. Haven't had an upgrade here. Level 2 out of 5 in that yellow area, and we'll zoom into this. This kind of shifts a little bit further to the west. This does include sections of southwestern Kansas, all the way into western areas of Oklahoma, and then down into the plains of western Texas. And this does include Amarillo, all the way down to San Angelo, Big Spring, Abilene. Gets to just west of Wichita Falls, west of Oklahoma City, gets up to Woodard, and all the way up into areas of like Greensburg, up into Kansas. So level 2 out of 5 risk, and we have a pretty large area that has a marginal risk all the way down to the Mexico-Texas border, all the way up to Iowa, Des Moines, and just south of Sioux Falls. Does include Sioux City and sections of Nebraska. So this is a much larger area that at least has a risk of severe weather, but the highlight area is further to the south. So what's driving this? All we know is that in the yellow area, there is a 15% risk of severe weather. But, and bear with me guys, give me grace, I'm a little bit rusty with discussing severe weather because, well, we went from the tropics to winter, and now we're kind of shifting back to severe weather season, and it makes it a little bit more complex because the Storm Prediction Center has switched some things up, and we're going to have new things to discuss as they're kind of micro-focusing on certain areas on bigger severe weather risk days. And we'll just leave it at that for now. We'll discuss that when we need to. But there's nothing new about this. And that black outlined area, we call that a hatched risk. So if you do live in the black outline area, you have a 10% risk of significant severe weather, which could be 2 inch in diameter or larger hail. It could be a strong EF2 or higher tornado, or it could be damaging winds exceeding hurricane force winds, 75, 80 miles per hour. So I think that Thursday could be a higher severe weather risk day, but I think what's driving this hatch risk is hail. I think we could have a larger 2.5 inch or a larger diameter hail size with some of these storms. So we'll watch for this, kind of a big Cape day I think that's going to develop for early March standards. So this is the new thing. This is what, there's a lot of severe weather fans out there, and whether they're pulling for severe weather to happen, whether they're not, we won't get too caught up in that. It's definitely a more sensitive topic. You got to be careful what you're rooting for. But Of course, this is affecting people's lives, but this is a big deal. So for Friday, which has always looked like our bigger severe weather day between now and the weekend, we now have an enhanced risk. So this is a day 4 graphic. So we're not going to have all those nitty gritty details, right? But if you live in this orange area, you already have a level 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather for day 4, which is Friday. I keep wanting to say Saturday, but an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. So this, once you start to get to level 3 out of 5 or higher, this is when we start to get into, okay, this is going to be a big severe weather day. And you do have the level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, the slight risk that stretches all the way up to Rochester, Minnesota, back to Chicago, Milwaukee, all the way down to pretty much Austin, Texas. So a large area of the middle of the country runs a risk of severe weather, but this is definitely going to be the bigger area. Oklahoma City, down to Sherman, Texas, Tulsa, Joplin, all the way up through Kansas City, St. Joseph. So this is definitely going to be a bigger day of severe weather. And all we know is that there is a 30% risk of severe weather. Okay, in the yellow area, a 15% risk. Now, once we get into Saturday onward, it just says predictability too low. In fact, I'm pretty sure yesterday there was a slight risk for Saturday. Excuse me, sorry guys. So I think they've kind of dropped that off, and that makes sense because it looks like we're going to have a cold front that sweeps through after this big system Friday and stabilizes things maybe for a large area of the country for a couple days. But I do think, and the Storm Prediction Center mentions this, as we start to get into Tuesday, Monday into Tuesday, it says moisture advection is forecast to take place over the Central Plains to the Great Lakes. And it says on Tuesday, models forecast a strong upper level system to eject across the country. And if this scenario works out, a greater severe threat appears possible Tuesday afternoon. And I really think, we could potentially get a big storm system. I don't know if you've heard me mention on social media or on here. I've always thought the March 10th to 12th time frame had big storm system written all over it, and we'll show you that here in a second. So I'm just going to show you the GFS. We're not going to go over a bunch of model data. And let me know if this graphic, if you like this. I did get one comment saying it was hard to read, but I like using Synoptic here because it's broader on the screen, and I honestly think the black contrast here makes everything pop a little bit better, but it's going to be impossible to get a perfect graphic. But you guys know I like getting detailed. I like showing individual towns and cities, but no graphic is going to be perfect. But hopefully you can see things well. But we're not in range of these short-range models, so we just look at a global model here. And what you'll notice here is we're getting into Wednesday is in the green and yellows and orange and red and things like that. That's showers and thunderstorms. And you can see it's highlighted down here. This is where we have that slight risk for tomorrow. And as we continue to move forward, we'll continue to have that energy, heavy rain. Flooding is going to be a threat. And then that moves through. Could get some showers, some thunderstorms Wednesday up here into the Midwest and Ohio Valley too. But we start to get into Thursday afternoon. This is when our attention kind of shifts to the high plains, and we'll get some thunderstorms in this region. And listen, I promise we're going to get more detailed as far as what these storms look like when we're in range, but we're not. We don't have anything really to show you. But you can already tell there's a 994 low popping off in eastern Colorado. And this is getting to Thursday night, 9 p.m. So you know that this is going to set the stage to the south and southeast for severe weather. And sure enough, as we move into Thursday night, Friday morning, not a whole lot going on. And then Friday, you're not seeing a whole lot of it. But Friday, we're going to get some thunderstorms start to get going here. And it might take till Friday evening. The timing might be late. And we're just watching the placement of this low pressure. This is up here. We got a 991 low. And listen, there could be a winter storm across western Nebraska, points north and northwest also that we'll talk a little bit more on here in a second. But the system is ejecting northward to the south. We're going to have a pooling, kind of a pooling, if you will, of low-level moisture further to the north. And we're probably going to get some thunderstorms across this region. Now, I know this doesn't look awfully impressive. It's just one global model. But across this region, Oklahoma, Kansas, like we mentioned with the graphics from the Storm Prediction Center, Missouri, Arkansas, we got that enhanced risk here. And these are going to be probably some strong to severe thunderstorms. And then we start to move into our late Friday night. And look, there's going to be a winter weather side of this too. I do want to mention this. winter weather side of this, this is 6 p.m. Friday. That would be a pretty strong but compact winter storm across the Dakotas. 994 low. Could be a blizzard, so we watch for that. But we start to get into our Saturday morning. We bog it back down to here. We're going to continue to get a lot of rain, regardless of if you get a severe weather threat or not, across the western Mid-South, the Mississippi Valley. You got just round after round of rain here. This is getting into midnight. This is getting into Sunday morning. Here comes another big rainstorm. Thunderstorms will be possible down here too. And then we get into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, we get into Monday, and maybe a little bit of a break as the atmosphere just kind of stabilizes. And then we get into Tuesday, and on this run of the GFS, you don't have much showing. Okay, but there could be a bigger storm system Tuesday into Wednesday, March 10th into the 11th. We just have to watch. And it does finally show it on the GFS, but it shows it more so in the next Thursday, shows a bigger storm system. But if you do look at, say, the Euro, let's look at the Euro for the same time frame, and let's back it up a little bit. This is getting into Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon of next week. So a week from today shows a big 987 low popping off the Rockies across the plains. And there's that big storm system I kind of been honking at a little bit. Big winter weather side of this, and then along the low pressure, just heavy rain, and then south of the low, you get the ingredients riding all the way up to the low, creating that triple point. And of course, we could get some strong to severe thunderstorms in Oklahoma, Texas, and just could be a bigger severe weather threat. And finally, this trough ejects, therefore the air mass and the pattern moves east. We could have a bigger storm system mid to late next week across the eastern U.S. after a dry and warm period. And then it just shows cold air dropping down, and winter weather starts to ooze back south as we get into the middle portion of the month. And you got that system. Then you got, man, check that out. That's very far out. That's literally 350 hours out. We got a big snow event pretty far south, especially for mid-March standards. But, as far as those severe weather ingredients here, this is tomorrow. This is the GFS. And once you start to get into this blue area, this is when we start to get over 35 knots of mid to upper level flow. This is 18,000 feet up in the air. So we look at this as kind of a pushing mechanism in the atmosphere to get these storms going. And there will be that right here across this slight risk area for tomorrow. And then we get into our Thursday. Okay, where's that set up? Thursday afternoon, we kind of lose the pushing mechanism here, kind of moves to the east, and then it reemerges across the high plains. So if you look in this kind of light blue, darker blue color, this is that mid-level jet, this favorable kinematics. Anytime I say kinematics, I'm talking about wind energy, moves into the high southern and central high plains, and therefore we see this flow coming out the south. See the arrow kind of pointing this way, okay, and kind of coming out the south. That means we have flow coming out the south. That means we have that rich, moist air coming out the south, rising to the north, and then sort of a countering or being overlapped by this flow right here in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And this continues, and as we get into Friday, you see just a larger, we'll make this larger. This is, let's back it up, we're all the way into Saturday morning. As we're getting into Friday, we get this a larger corridor of flow scooting across this region right here. Okay, so where's our best moisture going to be? It's probably going to be riding up through here. We'll have some kind of surface feature, I think, into here, and this will help bring a southerly flow up into this mid-level flow and just create favorable wind pattern for severe weather. This creates a pushing mechanism, drives a wind threat and a tornado threat. And do we have some sort of directional shear, meaning winds in the upper levels are kind of going like this, winds in the lower levels kind of going like this. This creates a turning in the atmosphere, directional shear. We get some tornadoes, etc. Hopefully not. And then we get into Saturday, things kind of get zonal. You see how these arrows are moving just west to east? When the pattern gets like that, you're not going to have much severe weather. But then as we're moving into, say, next Wednesday, that's when we can have a bigger storm system right into the picture. And if we flip here and we look at the Euro, it's much more aggressive with this scenario and has just basically a full-fledged trough ejection. You can see how the entire wind flow is moving across your screen and then moves into the east. So there's definitely some differences between the Euro and the GFS there. Now, this is a little bit more cut and dry, if you will, except it's definitely not dry, it's moist. But these are dew points. And so in response to this flow in the upper levels kind of coming in general out the south, we get more moist air that gets pulled, and then you get these lower level features that really enhances the pool of moisture, creates that moist sector. So anything that you see in blue, these are dew points in the 60 range, 60 degree range or higher. And that's the range you look for a thermodynamic, a surface moisture level, a dew point that supports severe weather. And you'll notice the blue area kind of bobs and weaves here. But then as we start to get into Friday afternoon, you get this big pulling northward, if you will, of moist air all the way up into, all the way up in the southern areas of Iowa, all the way up in Chicago. You pretty much get dew points around 60. In fact, you do. And this is getting into like Friday evening, which I think Friday's event could be more nocturnal, not like way late at night, but I think it could happen more so in the evening than in the early afternoon. But this is like 8, 9, 10 o'clock Friday, and we got these dew points in the 60 plus range all the way up to Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Iowa, and just a massive moist sector. Setting up pretty far north, and so it's going to get pretty moist. It's even and really, if you're trying to gauge humidity, guys, I've mentioned this many times, you look at dew points. You don't look at the relative humidity on your weather apps. Look at dew points. When you start to get in the 60s, you can walk outside. You can say, okay, there's a little bit of moisture in the air. When you get into the dew points in the 70s, it's starting to feel like a tropical rainforest. You get swamp butt, and it just I know you guys are like, dude, that's too much information. That's what we call it in the South. But it just gets awfully humid. It feels like a rainforest outside. And as we're starting to get into say Saturday, you can see that we even have moist air getting pulled into the Ohio Valley. We'll watch for some severe weather there. And then a cold front kind of sweeps out the air mass, and we get these dew points in the 20s and the 30s, and just it definitely dries out. You're not going to get severe weather in that. But the moist air kind of hangs out for the south. The cold front doesn't sweep all the way down. And then by the time we get into next week, we get these dew points rising once again all the way up into the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Mid-South, and then this could set the stage for another round of severe weather early to midway next week. And of course, in response to your higher dew points, you get higher CAPE levels. And I'm going to fly through this a little bit faster, and you're just going to see this CAPE building. We're getting into a Friday. You can see the big spiking of CAPE all the way up into Minnesota. This is going to be our bigger severe weather day, Friday. And then everything kind of flattens out, and then it kind of stays to the south. And as we're getting into next week, it rises north again. So now the kind of smaller scale features that we watch for, I know I'm getting uber detailed on this, is these low level jet features. So the wind's about a mile above our head, 6,000 feet above our head. So where's this going to be? Like, this is Wednesday. Tomorrow, you got this low level jet right over Missouri, Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, down to Texas, pushing, pushing 25, 35 knots. That's enough push in the atmosphere to get a damaging wind threat going. It's getting that kind of pushing mechanism in the atmosphere to really force these storms to go. And then we get into our Thursday. You can tell that low-level jet really shifts to the west, and it starts to get more significant also. We're pushing 40, 50 knots. So, and you can see the flow. You see the arrows pointing to the north. That means flow's coming out the south to the north. This is going to yank in that moist air across this region. Okay? And then we get into our Friday. And then we get this big time low-level jet ramping way up here, pushing 50, 60 knots. We're starting to get to interstate speed about a mile above our heads across the Midwest. And this is, depending on where your best overlapping moisture is at the surface, and winds are aloft, your thermodynamics being overlapped by your kinematics, the wind energy. That's where your highest severe weather threat's going to be. And on the GFS, it has a pretty substantial low-level jet right over the Midwest area, and this could be a big deal. And then this will probably create a big wind event across Southeast Canada, the Northeast, but you're going to be lacking other severe weather ingredients. And then everything kind of goes zonal for a while, and then we get into next week, and then that's when we have to watch out for. So that's a extremely detailed update on severe weather, and I'm doing that for y'all, but I'm doing it for me too, because it helps me kind of refresh on talking about severe weather. But let's not ignore the flooding threat between now and the next week. We're going to have multiple inches of rain across central to northeast Texas, eastern Oklahoma, northern areas of Louisiana, the entire state of Arkansas, into northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, and the southern areas of Missouri, we could get 2 to as much as 5 inches of rain. And then we take a look across areas in the Midwest. Good bit of rain. We're going to get a lot of rain today across areas of the southern Midwest, but multiple inches of rain are on the way down here. Soggy pattern setting up the Northeast. This could be in the form of snow also. We're going to get some of it today, but one thing that I will note to you guys is it's going to be pretty dry across the Southeast. I mean, this is rainfall between now and the next week. I mean, down to Georgia, the Carolinas, we're going to probably be like under the influence of the high pressure. So a lot of our energy is kind of going around us. So we're not going to get much. Now, just to kind of speak a little bit more detailed about the snow here, there is a signal for snow. And, you know, I want to watch a little bit into this weekend, because that system that's coming Friday into Saturday, that's going to bring a bigger severe weather day Friday across areas of the plains. There's going to be a winter weather side of this, and this is the Euro ensemble. You can see could get a snowstorm across the northern Rockies, central Rockies here, and maybe a few inches of snow across western Nebraska and the Dakotas. But then as we move past this, watch what happens here. Everything fills in like we're in the heart of winter. I mean, this is getting into mid-March, and we'll go all the way to the end of the run, which is all the way out to March 17th. And there's a pretty decent signal that winter, despite the warm-up, isn't going anywhere across the northern sections of the country. I mean, there's even a snow mean all the way down to Kansas and Missouri, and even a little bit of a signal down into Tennessee. And it's the same thing for the eastern U.S. This is for what's happening today into tomorrow. And, you know, then we get into the weekend. I mean, you're not going to get much into early to midway next week because of the ridge. But then as the system swings through mid to late next week, cold air follows. And then through mid-March, I mean, all of a sudden, you know, everything fills back in for the Great Lakes region, the Northeast, the Ohio Valley, the Midwest for a signal for snow. It doesn't, I mean, there's even a little small signal all the way down into northern areas of North Carolina and Tennessee. So I don't think winter's done. It's going to feel like it's going to be done when we get into this warm up. But to kind of back up what we're seeing there, this is the pattern, right? I mean, this is starting out Saturday, and we're going to have this big ridge that you see in the yellow, orange, and red. This is a huge, well-positioned spiking ridge over the east, going to bring well above average temperatures. I mean, it's literally going to get into the mid-80s across areas of the South. The mid-80s. It's definitely not uncommon to get into the 80s in March in the South at all. But, I mean, upper 80s, man, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call it rare, but, I mean, that's pretty warm. I mean, the pollen is about to absolutely go crazy. This blue blob down here, this is what we watch. Does this upper low, cutoff low, eject across the middle of the country? I think it does. I think it gets picked up by a trough that's about to dive down as I put this in motion. Here comes the trough, digging in. This is getting into next Monday, next Tuesday. It kind of scoops up that energy. And then we get this diving trough about 10 days from now. And listen, I've been calling this a Chungus trough, but this is a big core of cold air still. I mean, this is getting into mid-March, but this is going to try to dive down here and then totally wipe out the long warm-up that we're going to get over the next several days. But if this is what happens, and listen, the overnight Euro ensemble trended much colder, we're going to get a whiplash. It's going to be the definition of fall spring, and this trough kind of extends itself pretty far south, and that's a broad, deep trough. I mean, that is a large trough. That's going to bring down a nasty shot of cold air, I think, for mid-March standards. And I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. There's been talks about a polar vortex disruption and all that rigmarole. And it's legit. And we just got to watch this. And this could definitely make the second half of this month much different than the first half. So just keep that in mind. And sure enough, if you look at temperatures in response, a torch, let's just call it what it is, a torch. Some people get overly sensitive when it comes to talking about warm temperatures, because they correlated to climate change, and it just, man, people are so sensitive. I remember back over the summer when we were talking about a major heat wave, and, you know, people just get so worked up. It's just crazy. And it's just agenda-driven stuff, and I just like talking about the weather. I don't give a rip about anything else, really. Well, I do. You guys know what I mean. I don't get too caught up in the weather modification and the climate change and the HARP and all that. I like coming on here and talking about what I love, which is the weather. And it's just crazy the comments you see. But anyways, you get into Saturday, man, you talking about a nice warm spring day. This is gonna melt any snow you got on the ground very fast. You see these anomalies here in this color? This is over 30 degrees above average. I mean, it is gonna feel nice. And then maybe it moderates a little bit, but then we continue to be above average across the entire country next week. It's getting to Monday, it's getting to next Tuesday. Could be a secondary burst of well above average temperatures ahead of a sharp cold front that I think is going to dive down behind a big storm system. And look at those well below average temperatures starting to drop down to the Rockies, 5 to as much as 20 degrees below average. And then watch what happens. So we're getting to midway next week. These above average temperatures get absolutely wiped out. And we go back to average to below average temperatures. And that is a pretty strong signal showing up in the longer range for the second half of, starting the second half of March, mid to late March being cooler. And you can already see this being kind of discussed by the Climate Prediction Center. If you look here, they created this graphic yesterday, and you can tell, they're already honking the horn at between the 10th and the 16th. Below average temperatures, most likely returning for the middle of the country. And this will probably ooze into the east, too, in later updates. So today's weather, we got a system about to move into the northeast. We got some wintry mix action going on for the upper mid-Atlantic. We got a surge of moisture moving through the Midwest, kind of a dual surge, if you will, a little bit up top, a little bit at the bottom. And then we got a system moving across the Rockies about to move into the plains. That's current conditions. Winter weather advisories up for some winter weather across the northeast and southern New England today. A little bit of a wintry mix. Everybody else pretty quiet. The southeast, not a whole lot going on. Ridge is starting to move in. Another cooler day across the Carolinas, but this is our last cool day for the foreseeable future. But most of the energy kind of going around us, and for the most part, except up in Kentucky, it'll be pretty dry, maybe a little cloudy. Northeast, here comes a round of winter weather. And I mean, this is around 1, 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon. And we got some snow in the blue moving into, the Poconos, the Catskills, the Berkshire, southern New England. This will be some wet snow. This will move in, probably accumulate. And then by the time we start to move into this evening, warm air moves into the picture, could switch into some freezing rain, sleet. And the snow starts to take over Vermont, New Hampshire later this evening, and then get up into Maine. And then by the time we're into tomorrow, it's warming up, and we're done. But snow between now and the entire event. A few inches of snow here or there, maybe a little bit of ice. Here's the freezing rain graphic. And we could definitely get 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of a freezing rain. But I don't think this is going to cause any major issues just because I think it's going to melt fast. But there's definitely some freezing rain totals showing up here on your map. South Central U.S., watch out for some severe weather today. Up into Arkansas, there is a marginal risk in place that I didn't show you guys, but I think we're going to struggle getting storms of fire during the day. But I think as we're waking up tomorrow morning, this is when it's game on for an active stretch of severe weather. North Central U.S., maybe some flurries flying around, some freezing drizzle, sleet pellets, but it's going to be a rainy day across northern areas of Missouri, the southern half of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Look at this just steady area of rain down here. Some thunderstorms will be possible too, and you could even get some flooding. It's just steady rain. Another round enters tomorrow. So the western U.S. system flying through, some snow in the southern Wyoming area, northern Colorado. The system just swinging around. Then another system moves in tomorrow, late tonight into tomorrow morning across the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures, kind of pocket of colder air where the precipitation will be falling. And one last little cool day all the way down to Atlanta, Columbia. And then we're going to get warmth that takes over as we finally get rid of this nasty cold air damming event. But man, it's nice across most of the South. And then this is out west. So, all right, that's all I got. I'm going to stop. Well, I said I was going to stop it, but I quite literally stopped it. So we're going to make this, let's see. You know what? I'm tired of trying to figure this out. We're going to make this our timestamp here. And then we're going to do a quick Bible devotion. I got you one this morning. This morning we're in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. And it says, For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. And I said, we are created with purpose, make every day count, meaning you never know when God is going to call you to take action. So be ready. And And you know, I talk on this a lot, and I really do feel like we all have purpose. We all have God has a will in our life, and a lot of times, as followers of Christ, we really got to get out of our comfort zone. And I'm speaking to myself too. So we can, like it says in the scripture, it says it right here, that says, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. He's prepared it, but that doesn't always mean us as followers of Christ are going to follow through with it, because it makes us have to get out of our comfort zone. And that is using what you got, your gifts, your talents, whatever you got, and bring it to the table, and to use your surroundings as a mission field, to spread the gospel, to talk to others about Jesus, to plant the seed so God can work in and take care of the rest. That's our ultimate calling. So, you know, and I'm, like I said, I'm speaking heavily to myself here too. And, he's got the plan set out for us. We gotta put one foot in the other and make it happen. And, you know, I've used this a lot, but I think I've said it multiple times on the YouTube channel, but I think of it like this, and I forgot who told me this. Somebody told me this a long time ago, but God can put the quarter in the gumball machine, right? But you got to turn it to get it out, to get the gumball out. I hope that makes sense. So he can put the opportunity there, but you got to put in the effort to do it. So anyways, I wasn't able to write as many notes as I wanted to, because like I said, if you guys have been tuning in, I've been trying to read through my Bible, but I also want to fit these devotions in. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. And listen, one last thing on the devotion. If you're saved, you should want to do that. You know, you should want to live out the characteristics of Christ. You know, we're going to fall short every time, but you should want to go the extra mile. You should want to volunteer. You should want to do these things. It should be a desire on your heart and kind of a nagging on your heart when you want to push back on it. So, anyways, I know that's how it affects me. But anyways, have a wonderful day. God bless all y'all, and we'll have another video up tomorrow morning. Talk soon.